Okay, so this PowerPoint has two parts. The first part is looking at APA formatting. So I'm going to address key areas where I saw people struggling on the recent quiz and provide some strategies to improve accuracy in citations, references, and formatting. And the goal is to help you develop stronger APA formatting skills, which will benefit you in your writing. This is just a distribution of the quiz scores. Not that, again, that I'm using those numbers for anything, but just for yourself to kind of understand where your understanding fits within the spectrum of the class. So many students mistakenly included a running head for student papers, and I want to remind you that APA 7 only requires a running head for professional papers. So if you're submitting a student paper, which you are, you can omit the running head entirely. For professional papers, you want to ensure that the running head is placed in the header in all capital letters and does not include running head before it. A common mistake was incorrect formatting of the title page, which makes me want to cry. um, Ensure that the title is bolded and centered at the top of the page. The next lines should contain your name, institution, right? Manhattan University, course name, instructor, that's me, due date, May 5th, all double spaced and centered. It's the counseling and therapy department, by the way. Student papers do not require an abstract unless explicitly asked, and I am asking you to do one. So we'll talk about that when the time comes. So, please, if you're still not clear on this, go back to one of our very first classes where there was a video on how to do the title page. Some students italicized block quotes or added quotation marks, which is incorrect. A block quote is used for direct quotes that are 40 words or longer. The entire quote should be indented zero point 0.5 inches from the left margin, double spaced, and should not be enclosed in quotation marks. The citation should be placed after the closing punctuation of the quote. Okay, giving you an example here. Errors included listing all authors repeatedly or using et al. Too soon. So for 1 to 2 authors, always cite both names. For 3 or more authors, list all authors in the first citation and use et al. In subsequent citations. So this reduces redundancy and keeps the text concise while following APA conventions. Many students formatted their references incorrectly. So for journal articles, do not include um, key P period before page numbers. The DOI should be formatted as a URL. And for books, do not include the publisher's location as APA 7 removed that requirement. Level 3 headings should be bold, italicized, and followed by a period. The text should begin immediately after the period on the same line. Many students incorrectly place level 3 headings on a new line. Remember, heading levels are used for organizing content logically within your paper. APA 7 encourages bias-free and inclusive language. Avoid outdated or stigmatizing terms. Always prioritize person first language, which emphasizes the person rather than their condition, like a person with depression rather than a depressed person. When using a direct quote, always include the author's last name, the year of publication, and the page number where the quote was found. Many students omitted the page number, which is required for direct quotes. If the source does not have page numbers, for example, websites, use paragraph numbers instead. This is just for direct quotes, not paraphrasing. So mastering APA formatting does take time, but resources like Purdue OWL and APA's official guide can help. We've talked about that before, and citation tools, which we've also mentioned and was mentioned in last class, such as Otero or EndNote, can assist with references, but you always want to double check formatting. And lastly, of course, proofread carefully before submitting your paper. So now I want to transition to writing the results section in a thesis. So the results section has a very specific purpose. First, it's where you report your findings without any interpretation. You are simply stating what the data reveals, not explaining why it happened. That comes later in the discussion section. Second, the results must be presented in a logical order, usually aligned with your research questions or hypothesis. So this helps the reader follow along easily. Finally, the results section sets the stage for the discussion section where you will interpret what the findings mean in the context of existing research and theoretical frameworks. So let's take a look. Your results section should follow a clear structure. So you want to restate your research question. This reminds the reader of what you are addressing. You want to present your data. So depending on whether you used quantitative or qualitative methods, you will either be showing numbers, statistical analyses, or thematic findings. You want to highlight key findings that directly answer your research question. Do not include excessive detail, just what is most relevant to the study's objectives. You want to address unexpected or null results. So if something surprising occurred or your hypothesis was not supported, don't ignore it. Acknowledging these results strengthens the credibility of your research. Finally, your results should naturally lead into the discussion section where you will interpret the meaning of the findings. So let's now go over how to report quantitative results. If you're working with quantitative data, it's essential to present your numbers clearly and concisely. You want to use tables and figures to summarize numerical findings. These visuals should be labeled properly and referenced in the text. Report statistical results in an APA format. That means including mean values, standard deviations, p-values, effect size, and correlation coefficients where necessary. Clearly state whether the results were statistically significant or not. Finally, avoid overloading the reader with too much data. Focus on what is most important to answer your research question. Okay, so now let's talk about how to present qualitative results. For those of you working with qualitative research, your results section will look different. So instead of numbers and statistics, you will focus on themes and patterns that emerged from your data. Start by grouping responses into themes that align with your research question. Provide direct quotes from participants to illustrate key findings. Organize your findings in a structured way, either by research question or by theme. So for example, if you conducted interviews with counseling clients about their experiences, you might write, participants describe their counseling experiences as, quote, empowering and, quote, life-changing. One participant stated, my counselor really helped me reframe my childhood trauma into something I could manage daily, end quote. So this approach gives depth to your findings while ensuring they remain grounded in the data. So now let's talk about combining quantitative and qualitative data and mixed methods research for those of you doing that. So for mixed methods research, you need to combine both numerical data and qualitative insights. So start by reporting your quantitative results. These provide a broad statistical picture. Then introduce qualitative themes that either support or challenge the numerical data. Use side-by-side comparisons, quotes, and visuals to illustrate these connections. This structure allows you to integrate both data types effectively. All right, I want to talk now about what to do when you get unexpected or null results. Sometimes research findings don't turn out as expected. This is completely normal and should be addressed in the results section. To be honest, so you want to be honest about what the data shows, even if it contradicts your hypotheses. Compare your results to existing research. Are they consistent with past studies or did they introduce something new? Offer possible explanations for why your findings turned out the way they did. For example, maybe your sample size was too small, or your participants had prior exposure to counseling techniques that influenced their responses. Finally, consider whether any limitations in your methodology affected the outcomes. All right, so let's review some common mistakes next to avoid that. As you write your results section, be mindful of these common mistakes. Over explaining, okay? Your goal is to present the findings clearly and succinctly. You do not need to go into excessive detail, just enough for the reader to understand what was found. Interpreting the results too early. Remember, the results section is not for analysis. Avoid discussing why something happened. That belongs in the discussion section. Including raw data. If you conducted a survey or qualitative study, do not paste all the responses or transcripts into your thesis. Instead, summarize key findings in tables or narrative form. Ignoring negative or unexpected results. So if you didn't find what you expected, that's okay. So acknowledging this and explaining possible reasons will strengthen your research. Not aligning results with the research questions. Every result should connect directly to your research question. If something does not relate to your original aim, it may belong in an appendix instead. All right, so now that we've covered some of the common pitfalls, let's talk about how to transition smoothly into the discussion section. The last part of your results section should smoothly transition into the discussion section where you will analyze the significance of your findings. So you want to start by briefly summarizing the key results, but do not go into too much detail. Connect the results back to your research question. What did you find in relation to your hypothesis? Finally, set up the discussion by hinting, okay, at what the findings might mean without actually interpreting them yet. So let's go over a checklist to make sure your results section is well structured and complete. Before you submit, go through this checklist to ensure your results section is clear and effective. So did you restate your research question at the beginning of the section? Did you present your data clearly using tables, figures, or well-organized narratives? Did you highlight the key findings without overwhelming the reader? Did you report both significant and non-significant results accurately? Did you avoid interpreting the results? Remember, you're saving that for the discussion section. Did you end with a transition that prepares the reader for the next section? If you can answer yes to all these, your results section is in great shape. So let's review the key takeaways. The results section should be purely factual. It presents findings without interpretation. Use tables, figures, and summaries to help the reader digest the information quickly. Keep it concise. Only include findings that answer your research questions. If your results didn't align with your expectations, that's still valuable. Be transparent about what you found. End with a smooth transition into the discussion section, setting up the next part of your thesis. I had some people ask me some questions as well that I wanted to address with everybody. So, if you conducted ethnographic research, your field notes contain rich qualitative data that you need to analyze and present in the results section. So, here's what to do. You want to summarize and organize your notes. So, instead of dumping everything into your thesis, sort your notes by emerging themes or how they answer your research question. You want to use key quotes. So if a participant said something especially insightful, include direct quotes as evidence of your findings. Excuse me. Describe the context. Explain the setting, body language, and other relevant observations. Identify patterns and themes. So look for common behaviors, expressions, or emotions in your observation. Decide how to present it. So will your results be narrative style in tables or a mix of both? Include your raw field notes in an appendix. So if necessary, you can keep them in the appendix and that way they're available for transparency. So for example, in your results section, instead of listing all your notes, you could write, during counseling sessions, students frequently hesitated before responding to direct questions about their emotions. One participant stated, I just don't know what to say at first. Like, I need time to figure out if I can trust my counselor. End quote. This pattern suggests a need for extended rapport building before students feel comfortable opening up. So you see that type of approach ensures that your fieldwork contributes meaningfully to your thesis rather than overwhelming the reader with raw data. An appendix is where you put your important supporting material that are too detailed to include in the main text, but helpful for reference. So common items that go into an appendix include raw data like complete field notes, transcripts or full survey responses, tables or figures that were too large or detailed to include in the results section, additional documentation such as consent forms or data coding frameworks, research instruments like your full list of interview or survey questions. For example, if you conducted interviews, you might only include key excerpts in the results section, but place full transcripts in the appendix for reference. This is an example of a quantitative results section. Notice how statistical results are presented concisely in an APA format. Numbers and significance levels are reported clearly. Findings are described objectively without interpretation. Your results section should follow a similar format if you are working with quantitative data. This is an example of qualitative results. Notice how the results are organized by theme, not by participant. Direct quotes from participants are used as evidence. Findings are summarized objectively without personal interpretation. So if your research is qualitative, you should structure your results section using a similar approach. If you happen to be in my group counseling class and you have gotten feedback from me about how your group did, I always use the peer um, results to anchor statements to. So I'll take a quote for something a peer wrote in their review of your facilitation style, and then I will use that to make a point. Um, I basically just naturally do qualitative research. I also did it in that letter that I read to you last week. Okay, so that is basically qualitative research. It's like I looked through a data set, I was identifying what themes were emerging. I talked about those themes, but it wasn't like my opinion, it was me drawing quotes to basically make the point for me. This is an example of a mixed methods results section, which starts with quantitative findings, so numerical results and significance levels. It follows with qualitative insights, so themes and direct quotes. It integrates both to provide a complete picture. So if your research involves both statistical and thematic analysis, aim for this kind of structured and balanced presentation. Would also want to throw in a slide about thematic analysis. So, because this is such a common method for analyzing qualitative data, particularly when working with interviews, focus groups, or ethnographic field notes, which many of you are. So, it helps identify patterns and themes within qualitative responses. So, here's my 6-step thematic analysis slide. Step 1, familiarization. So start by reading and rereading your data, taking notes on anything that stands out. Step 2, initial coding. Assign codes to words, phrases, or sentences that seem significant. Codes are just short, it's just a fancy way to say a short description of what the text is about. So for example, trust issues, that's a code. Emotional resilience, that could be a code. Step 3 is generating themes. So look for patterns among the codes. Combine similar codes into broader themes that capture the essence of your data. Step 4, reviewing themes. So make sure your themes are clear and distinctive from each other. Merge overlapping themes and eliminate weak themes that do not contribute meaningfully to the research. Step 5, defining and naming themes. So clearly define what each theme represents. Give each theme a concise and descriptive name, like, for example, barriers to counseling access. Step 6, writing the results. So use your themes as subheadings in the results section. Support each theme with participant quotes and explanations. For example, if you conducted interviews on student experiences in counseling, your themes might be Theme 1, building trust with counselors. At first, I wasn't sure if I could talk about my personal life, but over time I felt comfortable, end quote. Theme 2, coping strategies gained in therapy. Quote, therapy helped me develop ways to manage stress and avoid shutting down emotionally, end quote. So you see, this structured approach ensures that your qualitative findings are clear, organized, and meaningful. I love this, man. It's like I never have to say anything. The data is speaking for itself. Okay. I find this super fun. I will possibly make another slide or give you more examples as we go on. But this is a very long PowerPoint, so I might just stop here.